Good morning. My name is Felice Douglas, and I'm from College Momentum Academy, and today we're going to talk about financial aid and scholarships. I just want to make sure everybody's in the right place. I'm going to jump right in because I usually take a little bit longer to do this presentation, but we're going to do it in 50 minutes, hopefully a little bit shorter, so that if any of you have questions, you'll be able to ask them before we go. But before we start, it is always helpful to me to find out who's the ages of your students that you're representing here today. So is anyone here, does anyone here have a senior? Just a couple. Okay, juniors, sophomores, thank you. Freshmen, awesome. 8th graders, yes. Okay, so for those of you who feel the clock ticking, I'm glad you're here. To get as much information as you can. But for those of you who have a little bit more time, even better that you're gathering information as early as possible. So let's start talking about financial aid and scholarships. So first, we need a definition. When colleges are talking about financial aid, what are they saying? They are talking about all the money that can come from outside of your household to pay for college expenses. So when a college says we provide financial aid to 80% of our students, that sounds really good, but they're also including loans. So any student who wants a loan almost can get one. So be careful when you hear what the colleges are saying. You have to understand what language they're using and make sure that you're hearing it in your own language. So there are lots of different types of financial aid. I use this hierarchy so that you can get a sense of all the different types of places where the money can come from. And I start at the top with the things that are most desirable. So most desirable will be scholarships, and they can come from the colleges themselves, or they can come from outside sources like foundations, businesses, community organizations, right? So we like scholarships the best because students are responsible for getting scholarships, not parents. Students are responsible for getting that money. And also, scholarships don't have to be paid back. The next level is grants. We like grants as well because that's money that doesn't have to be paid back. However, not every student will be eligible for grants. Those are need-based, and we'll talk more in depth about the biggest grant program later. The next level that I give you has to do with family contribution. Because first, we like other people to pay for college. Then it's best to pay for college yourself. So whatever resources your student has or that you have. So for student resources, we're talking about working basically. For parent resources, we're talking about anything you have in savings, anything that you can pay out of pocket. The last level that I give you will be loans. Loans are at the bottom. We hear a lot about student loans, and we get the impression that the only way that families can pay for college is to take out loans. It's not true. You see other things up on that screen, and we're going to talk about all the different things today, but the last line of defense, I hope, for everyone will be the loans. Do everything else you can, and whatever you can't do from all these other sources is what you do with the loan. So we'll talk about all these different things today. Unfortunately, this came out a little bit wonky on this screen, so I'll describe it for you. The cost of attendance at college. When you are doing your research to find out how much it costs, for your students who attend college, make sure you are looking at the total cost of attendance. We know that you have to pay tuition, but there are also the other costs that come with it. For example, room and board if your student's going to go away to school. Fees can be as much as $1,000 a semester depending on the college, so you have to put that into your budget. But then there are also, you can see at the bottom, indirect costs. So those are the things that you pay to the college, and the college will send you a bill for. But the other things are things you have to think about. You have to come up with money for books, and the average cost for books right now is about $1,800 a year. That's a lot if you didn't budget for it. So you have to think about the other costs that come with college. And I hear some wows in the front, and I know when I went to school, it was 1989. And things were extremely different. So sometimes we get caught up in back in my day, and we know how much it cost back then, or maybe you didn't. Maybe your parents kept it from you too. If you went the traditional way, maybe your parents helped you out and you didn't even know how much college cost. But now we're in a place where the cost of college as a percentage of family income has skyrocketed. And it's no longer a place where most of us can just write a check. We have to be aware, and we have to make our students aware of what kind of sacrifice we're making for them. So getting as much information as possible here without the students today is great. But the next step is to have a conversation with your students to let them know how important this information is, how you need them to come up with as much money as possible, and we'll talk about the different ways to bring the cost down today. So what colleges will do is, excuse me, come up with an average. So they know what the tuition is. That's a fixed number for most programs at that school. But the other numbers are based on an average, what kind of room your student's going to be in, what kind of meal package they get, what their books are for their program as opposed to a different program. But they'll average that out for the typical student at their school and come up with this number. Now that number will be published on their website if it's a traditional nonprofit university. Some schools that will what we call proprietary will not publish their numbers on their website, but if they do accept financial aid from the federal government, you can get those numbers. They should be there. But let's talk about what those costs are for this current year, 2016-2017. So it'll be different for your students. It will go up, it will not go down, but at least you can get a sense of where it is. So for right now, community colleges are very, very popular because the cost of attendance for an entire year, including a full load of classes in the fall and in the spring, will be about $5,000 here in Virginia. So Nova is busting at the seams, and this is one of the reasons why. There are a lot of other reasons why Nova is awesome, but this is one of the reasons. Of course, that doesn't include living expenses. Just take note of that. Now, if your student decides to go to a public university in Virginia or where you have residency, that cost right now averages $28,000. Now, that includes room and board. So your cost would be different if your student decides to commute to George Mason, but if they decide to go live at any of our other public colleges, that's your average. There are a few that are significantly higher, a couple that are less, but for the most part, you're looking at almost $30,000 a year out of pocket before aid is applied. Right? Now, if your student decides to cross state lines into a state in which you do not have residency, the average for that right now is $50,000. Right? So there's an advantage, there's a home advantage, right? Home field advantage. Staying at home will residency in a different state, or you take advantage of some of the few programs that are out there that gives you in-state residency in a different state, or in-state tuition in that state. Please research that early, before you say, well, grandma lives in Ohio, so we're going to get in-state tuition in Ohio. It doesn't necessarily work like that. In fact, in most states, I would say in 48 out of 50 states, it doesn't work like that. They're looking at where the student graduates, where the parents live, where you pay taxes, not where you have extended family. So please research that early. Now, some states are friendlier than that. We live near some friendly states, North Carolina, West Virginia, where it's less than that. But we also live close to some states that are not so friendly, like Pennsylvania. A lot of students want to go to California. Those are extremely expensive, and I know for sure last year the cost in California and in Pennsylvania was $55 and up. Okay, so be careful again. If you know that your student wants to go to an out-of-state public school, do your research to see if you can get some kind of discounts on that. The last type are the private schools. They can be up to $75,000. And here in D.C., we have some of the most expensive schools in the country. Also New York, Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, big cities, especially East Coast cities, we have expensive schools. But keep in mind that most of the people there can't afford the tuition. They're not paying $75,000 a year or $60,000 or whatever it is. Private schools have what we call endowments. They have this money that they use to bring down their tuition. So they publish their costs, and then they work with you to bring the price down through scholarships, through their own grants. So don't be afraid of the price. If most of us are price shoppers in one way or another, and if you see that the college that your student is interested in costs something that seems totally ridiculous, don't be afraid, because they may have programs to bring that cost down. I have stories about a lot of students who are at schools when they were down to the last two trying to make their decision between this public school and this private school, and when they got the financial aid package, they were similar enough to make the private school feasible. So again, doing your research early will help. Keep in mind that no matter what you do, a 4-year degree is a 6-figure investment. Whether other people are doing that investing primarily, or you are, or you're doing it through loans, you should know that even at a public school, you're going to pay, it's going to cost $100,000 or more. So just as with any other 6-figure investment, you can't leave it to the last minute. When you were buying a home or even looking at a car, you had help. You don't do that by yourself. So get people on your team that can help you out. Talk to your, if you do have assets that you're going to be using, make regular meetings with your with your financial advisor. Talk with the schools themselves and figure out this process as early as possible. So I'm glad you're here. Another term that you're going to see in the process is expected family contribution. So has anybody here ever filled out a FAFSA? A few of you. That's the financial aid form we'll talk about in a little bit that all of you should fill out when it's time. At the end of that form, you give them your income and assets, and we'll talk about that in depth. But they come up with this number that is what the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, feels that your family can afford to pay towards college in the upcoming year. And it doesn't have to do with what you feel you can pay. It has to do with what they calculate for everybody, using the same formula for everyone. So they can put you sort of on an even keel with everybody else. And the colleges will say, okay, here's the students that have the most need based on this calculation, right? So that's called expected family contribution. It's a number that stays with the student for the entire year. So for the first year, your student's senior year, let's say, when they're applying to colleges, they'll have a few colleges that they get into, and every college will have that same number. And it's a number that's anywhere from $0 to $99,000, right? So hopefully, the closer to 0 you get, the better. But for those of us who are in two-income families or something like that, it's hard to get that number down. Still, don't fret about it, but that's a number. That's a word that you're going to have to know. It's made up of 2 parts. There's the parent contribution, so they want to know about the parent's income and certain assets, and there's also a student contribution. So if the student works, or if the student has assets held in his or her own name, that goes on the FAFSA as well. So the way that colleges will calculate how much aid that a student's going to get, besides scholarships, the other types of aid, is called financial need. They take the cost of the college, subtract out your family's EFC, and the number that's left over is called financial need, and that's the number that they'll use to apply need-based aid. So that will be, we'll talk about in a minute, grants. And sometimes certain types of loans, maybe work study, right? So it'll vary based on the cost of the college. The EFC is a number that follows your student around, and the cost of the college will change with every school. So you have to be mindful of how that works. Colleges may or may not be able to fill in the need. So that's the problem. If you fill out the FAFSA and you look at your EFC and you go, oh, well, they say we can afford to pay $10,000. That means the college will come up with the rest. No. That means they'll try, and a lot of that will be filled in with loans, just so you know. They'll expect you to take out loans for a lot of it. So the 4 types of aid that they'll use and that you have access to: scholarships, grants, loans, work study. So we'll talk about all 4 of those types. I spent a little bit of time talking about scholarships with you because I want you to, some of you have 8th, 9th graders, and you have time to bring that message home. Money that does not have to be paid back, and you don't have to be a 4.0 student. That is a nasty rumor that's out there that only the top students get scholarships. Yes, you have a better chance if the better your grades are. Yes, you have a better chance the better athlete you are. But you also have scholarships that are based on interests, that are based on other skills like playing the cello or being able to sail. Or I've had students that everyone has heard of the duct tape scholarship, or you make a prom dress. Or I had one student who got scholarships because he could do yo-yo tricks. There are all kinds of scholarships out there. Yes, there's a left-handed one. Yes, there's one for people who are very tall. There's one for every ethnic group on the planet. But it takes work to find those things, and students have to do a combination of academic and the other things that they're into. So the big deal is making the effort, and a student who knows that, okay, I want to go to this school that maybe my parents can't afford, or it's really far away, so there are extra expenses for that. Or I don't know where I want to go, but I want to make sure I have a fund of money available. Can start working on every scholarship available for a 9th or 10th grader. You know, I did that, and this is part of the reason why I do what I do. I knew I wanted something that my parents didn't want to pay for. I'm just like that. So they told me, well, if you want that, you have to come up with the money beyond what we're willing to pay. All right. So I gave speeches. I filled out every scholarship application that I could come across. I did everything short of putting together a robot, because I was not into that, but I did everything else. So I was able to come up with some money. And then I got a full ride to the school of my choice, because I hounded them about it. I let them know that I didn't want to go anywhere else. This is where I wanted to go. I had the grades for it. I went to a summer program there. They didn't have a choice but to, tell me why I wasn't getting a scholarship. Of course, this was the 80s. It was a little bit different, but I did everything I thought I could do. So that extra money went into my account, and I didn't have to work for a couple of years, and my parents didn't have to send me pocket money. I had enough. I want that for everybody. I mean, that's really why I do this. I want everyone to have that experience. So you do that by starting really early and making applying for scholarships just part of the process. Every week, let's do something to move us forward towards getting more money towards college. That means filling out a scholarship application, doing a summer program on a college campus, doing internships or, job shadowing opportunities, anything you can do that will get you in the network of getting more money. You can go to collegeboard.org, fastweb.com, scholarships.com. There's an app for your phone called Scholly that's really popular right now. And again, this is part of the process of getting used to knowing what's out there and being ready for what's coming. If you sign up for the newsletter, I am happy to, or just go out to my website, which I'll give you at the end. I'll put this out there. I have a new website just yesterday, so it may be a little hard for me to put everything out there, but I'll make sure you get it. Okay, I'm going to move on. I see people taking pictures, but I'll make sure you have access to that, because we have to talk about the other end of the spectrum. Now, if you don't want to bother with all that scholarship stuff, you are welcome to take out loans, right? That is a much, much easier process. One form, and you can have all the loan money you want. But of course, we know why we don't want to take out loans. Parents can borrow on behalf of the students, and students can borrow on behalf of themselves. They can borrow for themselves, but the amounts are different. I'll show you in a minute. For students, repayment begins after their education is finished. So they're in school for 4 years or 5 years. The average is 4.6 now for a bachelor's degree for a traditional student. So please calculate that. 9 semesters, not 8. But that money isn't real to them yet. When they start college, they're usually about 18. They've never had $5,000, probably. And that they don't have it in their hands. It just goes into their account. And they know at some point they're going to have to pay it back. And at this point, it's still, I'll get a job after college, and I'll have lots of money, and I'll drive a fancy car and have this great apartment, and I'll pay my loans back. But that becomes more real, 4 years later, when they look and they see, well, I've got $30,000 worth of debt, right? So it comes gradually. Please start having that conversation about debt with them now. I know they have a class here, but the conversations that you have carry more weight about what debt really means and what it's like to have a $500, $700, $1,000 student loan payment when they're 22. That's scary. Please inform them they should only borrow what's really needed, because some of them will borrow money to get a better car. They'll borrow money to go on spring break. right? They will. Seen it. So please, let them know that that money is only to be used for school or whatever you all decide. But they're an investment. So just like any other investment, you have to take care of it. You have to pay attention to it. You have to open the bill when it comes, right? And there are ways to make sure that they don't owe a lot more when they graduate than when they borrowed it. The interest accrues from the beginning. So if they pay the interest down, it keeps it under control. So I'm going to give you this chart. You're welcome to take pictures of it. I'm going to give you a resource that's not on the screen, studentaid.gov. Studentaid.gov. That is where all this information comes from, and these numbers get updated every single year in July. I'll just explain it a little bit. There are two different types of loans. There's the Stafford loan for students. So when you fill out the appropriate paperwork, your students can borrow without any other input from you. So you are not on the hook for a Stafford student loan. It goes on their credit. So if they don't pay it back, it will haunt them for the rest of their lives, but it will not haunt you, right? So it may be need-based. There are different types of Stafford loans. I'm going to talk about the one that most people will qualify for, which is the unsubsidized. Most of your students will get an unsubsidized student loan. Some of your students will get a subsidized loan that has better terms. So I'll just talk about the unsubsidized. There is no credit check. They're hoping that your 18-year-olds don't have credit issues. Fixed interest rate right now is under 4%. It's pretty good for an 18-year-old that doesn't have any a cosigner or anything like that. You're not going to find that rate anywhere else, which is why I give you this information. These are the federal loans. And you can go to your credit union or your bank and look at what loans, what products they have. But I want to give you this as a baseline. So at least you know what the federal loans are, and if you can do better, you can do that. The first-year students, however, can only borrow $5,500. You cannot tell your 18-year-old, okay, you ready for college, go do it, because they won't be able to borrow enough. They need your help, at least in guidance and trying to get towards some of these other products. The usual repayment period is 10 years. So once they graduate at 22-ish, then they have until they're 32 with this monthly payment that's on their backs. So again, when you think about loans, we do it quickly sometimes, like, oh, we're short, we just have to take out a loan. But think about the long-term ramifications. If your student has to pay $500 a month until they're 32 years old, that can stop them from doing some things like buying a car, buying a home, right? So this is their last line of defense. And repayment begins after they're out of school. So like I said, it's not real yet. They don't have any payments that they have to make until 6 months after they're no longer in school. And that means they graduated or they dropped out. Either way, they have to pay it back. Now for the parent loan, it's a little bit different. It's not need-based, but it is credit-based. So they do run a very quick credit check just to make sure you're not in the bottom 20% of all borrowers, or you don't have any of your own student loans in default. You may have your own loans, but if they're current, then you're okay. Parents may borrow up to the cost of attendance. So after all other aid is dispersed, if you still have a balance left, you can borrow the rest. See, big difference. But the interest rate is also way higher, more than 2% higher for the parents. So a lot of parents, even though they say, we want to take this on, we don't want you to have loans, they'll have the student take out the student loan first because it has better rates. Also, so you know, the origination fee for parents, I didn't talk about this one. For students, it's 1%. That's good. Origination fee, right off the bat, they take 1%. For parents, it's 4%. So you got 10% basically that you're paying for this loan. 6% that keeps going, but 4% off the top. That's crazy. So again, please make sure if you know that you have to borrow as a parent that you're comparing apples to apples. You're looking at the federal rates that'll come out for those of you who have seniors, come out in July. You'll know about them a little bit earlier. And then look at your bank, your credit union, borrowing against your own assets to see what's going to be best for you. You also have 10 years, but your 10 years starts now. So as soon as the money is dispersed, you have 60 days, you'll get the first bill. Right? So it's a little bit different for parents. They expect that you're able to start paying now, where your students, they give them a break. Lots of information there, I know, but are there general questions about borrowing for college? You'll have them later. So you'll have my information. Please feel free to email me or anything like if you have questions. I love random questions. Did I see a hand? No? Okay. So let's talk about happier things. If your family qualifies, you may be eligible for grants from both the federal government and the state government. Most grants are need-based. There are a few that are not. And some examples of those that are not need-based would be like the TEACH grant. So they're still looking for more students to be teachers, so they offer this grant to help students out with that. There are some state grants. For example, there's a grant for students who graduated from Virginia high schools that are going to Virginia private institutions. So, for example, University of Richmond or Washington and Lee. Those schools, the state offers some grants to bring the cost of those private schools down a little bit because they don't want to lose students to other states, right? But the largest grant program in the country is the oldest as well. It's called Pell Grant. It is need-based, and not everyone's going to get it. So most students, again, if you're from a two-income family, higher income, you're not going to see this, but some of you may be eligible. And the maximum amount for this year is $5,815. So again, it used to be where you got a Pell Grant and paid all your tuition. It doesn't happen that way anymore unless you're at a community college. Right now it pays a little bit of what you need. So I used to use screens that have puzzle pieces because you have to do a lot of different things in order to get college paid for. You need a little money from over here, a little bit scholarship money, well, a lot of scholarship money is great. Money from grandma, whoever is willing to pitch in, and grants are just a little piece of that. So that's sort of an automatic process when you fill out the FAFSA, we'll talk about in a minute. There may be some additional forms, but the FAFSA is the form that starts all this process. The last type of financial aid we'll talk about is work study. That is financial aid. It runs through the financial aid office, and that is when a student has a job on campus or at a community agency right off campus, and they work for a paycheck. It's considered part of financial aid because they offer it to the students in the most need first. But at some campuses, any student, they have enough jobs where any student can get it. And the advantage of that is that, if you want your student to work, and students are working less than they used to, but I think we have to remember why we're sending them to college in the first place. It's not so that they can be great students, right? It's so they can learn how to work and get better jobs. But they have to have a job in the first place. I can't tell you how many students I've met who graduate from college never having held a job. And that's great if you already know you're going to be an entrepreneur or you're just going to write poetry. But most of us can't do that, right? Most of us have to be able, and you want them to be able to support themselves, right? The average age that students actually leave home for good is 26. So a lot of your kids already have you all seem very upset about that. A lot of your students already have the plan that when they graduate from college, they're moving back home. They already know that. So if that is not your plan, you need to let them know. Okay, you have to leave, okay? So this is part of the way that you train them how to leave, is to ask them to work while they're in college, even if it's 5 to 10 hours a week. That's how they learn how to punch in, be somewhere on time, budget their own money, work under a boss. That's one of the problems that they're finding with students who graduate from college. They think that I have a degree now, I should have a corner office and someone should be getting me coffee. No. Okay, so they have to learn all that. That's a whole other thing I work with students on, that doesn't happen for you. So they receive a paycheck for work study, but there are all kinds of jobs they can have on campus that have other kinds of compensation. My favorite is students who go out of their way to be an RA, the resident assistant in the dorms. If they're living in the dorms already, they plan to stay there past freshman year, they can help run the dorm, squash fights between roommates, make sure the bathrooms are clean, that kind of thing, help people when they're locked out, and they get free room and board for that. That's half of what you pay a public college. So that's a great job. There's also, working for the admissions office and those kinds of things that students can do while they study that don't interfere with their studies but help you to pay for college. So how do you get all this? For grants, loans, and work study, you fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It's a form that every family that's sending a student off to college, unless they are planning to write a check for the entire amount, should fill out the FAFSA. That's a question I get all the time. Well, we make too much money. We shouldn't fill out the FAFSA. Yes, you should, because there's lots of aid that's not dependent on your income, but they want the FAFSA anyway. If your student is going to play NCAA sports and Division I or Division II and get scholarship money, they have to have a FAFSA on file. Some colleges won't give out the scholarships until you fill out a FAFSA, so fill it out. It's a much faster form than it used to be. If you remember going to the library and getting the form and having to fill out pages and pages of information, it has changed, thank goodness. And this is how colleges will get your EFC. So I'm going to give you what the page looks like right now. I do this because there are lots of companies, especially if your student is closer to graduation or has already taken the ACT or the SAT, you might be getting a lot of mail and email from places that want to take your money or they want to tell you about college funding and that, right? So there are places that, I told you this is a free form. You'll fill it out, and it is the FAFSA, but then they'll ask for your credit card number at the end. Please be careful about that. This is what the page looks like. It says U.S. Department of Education at the top, and it says free. So be careful about that. Now, for students, those of you who have seniors, you could have started this form in October. If you haven't done it yet, do it now. It used to be you had to wait until January and fill it out twice and all this other stuff. So from now on, you will fill out this form in October, starting in October, of your student's senior year. They will use information, your tax information that you've already filed. So you can start filling out the FAFSA in October of your student's senior year. You'll fill it out every year he or she is in college. If you have multiple kids in college, you can fill out the form once and then follow the directions at the end, and you won't have to fill it out twice or 3 times if you have multiples in college. There's lots of different ways that make this easier. It'll save your information from previous years. So this isn't the painful process that it used to be. In order to fill out the FAFSA, your student has to be in one of these categories. It's just for the student, not for the parent. A U.S. citizen, U.S. national, permanent resident, or in possession of an I-94 with certain designations. If you have questions about that, please feel free to get in touch with me, with the counselor, or with the FAFSA. If you go to the FAFSA page, there's an 800 number that's staffed every day. In order to fill out the FAFSA, there's some things you should pull together, and I'm just giving you this quickly because I know most of you won't be doing this right now, but things you need to think about. You have to have an FSA ID. That's just your federal student aid ID, one for the student, one for one parent. So even if the student's in a 2-parent household, only one parent can sign the FAFSA at a time. Social security numbers for the student and for one or both parents, depending on who the student lives with. Alien registration number if the student has a green card, but only the student. The list of colleges to which the student is planning to apply. Now, because this process is happening earlier, so is the admissions process moving earlier and earlier. So those of you who have 8th and 9th graders, you may be shocked to know that by the time your students get to be seniors, they may be filling out their applications in junior year. It's crazy. But right now, your students who are juniors and sophomores can plan on getting their applications together starting in August. So having that list, they should have a good list going by the time you fill out the FAFSA. Sir, you had your hand up? Okay, I'll give you the skinny on everything, okay? If your student lives with the two natural parents, that's easy. Parent 1, parent 2. If the student, I'm just giving you everything so everyone's question is answered about this because this is one of the biggest questions I get. If the parents are not married or divorced and the student lives with one or the other, it's just that parent. unless that parent is remarried. So if the student lives with you and you are remarried, then there's still two parents, natural parent, step parent. The question is, what is your parent's legal status, marital status? And if the marital status is married, they don't care whether it's a natural parent or a step parent. A parent's a parent. If the student lives with a legal guardian or is a ward of the state, then that student is independent on the FAFSA and does not have to list parental information at all. But that's only if it's legal guardianship. If student just lives with someone else and it's not through the courts, then a parent has to be hunted down. So you have to be able to show the college once the final decision is made. They'll ask for the guardianship paperwork. So if you have that ready to go, then you're set. Now that's the way it is now. It's the way it's been for a while. But if your student is not a senior right now, I can't guarantee you what it's going to be next year. Things change from year to year, but that has been a long process that a lot of people who are in the space I work in worked on. So hopefully that'll still be the case. So if you have more questions about how to handle a parental situation, I think I have 10 minutes after this is over. I'll be glad to answer those questions for you. Or again, I'll give you my contact information because I know that can be a really tough process if your family is not traditional, which is most of us anymore, right? Okay, you should have your tax forms available when you're ready to fill out the FAFSA, and that's for the most recent taxes that you filled out. However, you are not going to actually enter that information. They are going to go to irs.gov and download it for you. Right? So there's no more, we trust you to put in your tax information. They're going to get it from the IRS. If you are unable to do that because of some circumstance like you filed married filing separately, you won't be able to download it that way. Or if you filed an amended return. So that's going to be a little bit more laborious process for you, but most of us will be able to just go right out to the IRS. And then they're going to ask you about amounts that you have in your checking, savings, and certain investment accounts. And I want to just press on this one really quickly. That means almost all of your investments except your primary home. Please don't put the value of your home on there. And the value of your earmarked retirement accounts. You do not have to tell them that. They're not asking for that information. So since a lot of us have our equity in our homes and in our retirements and our TSPs and our 401ks, that's good news. You do not have to report that information. They are asking for what you have, though, in 529 plans, so college savings plans for any and all students that are in your household. And if your students have trust accounts, UGMA accounts, then those have to be reported as well as parental assets. Okay, so as that time gets closer, because I know a lot of you have a few years to go, that's the time when you want to make sure you're talking to somebody who does this, either from the college, someone like me, or your financial advisor to figure out how to put that information on the FAFSA. Okay, I'm going to move on to one more form that some of you will have to fill out called the CSS Profile. The profile is becoming more and more popular as the FAFSA gets easier and has less information. Some colleges want more information about you. So I hope some of you noticed that we said that the FAFSA only asks you for income and certain assets. They don't ask you about your home and your retirement. The CSS Profile does. They also don't ask you about your expenses. So here in Northern Virginia, we need to tell them how expensive it is, right? It's not like other places, a lot of other places in the country. So this is a form done through collegeboard.org. So if your student is taking the SAT or taking AP classes, you'll become familiar with this site anyway. It's a lot more detailed, and there's some fees. Right now, it's $25 for the first school and $16 for each additional school. So it can get expensive if your student decides, okay, I'm going to apply to every Ivy League school, which is becoming more popular to do. Don't do that. Or most of the schools that use this are top-tier private institutions, but more and more public schools are starting to use it, like University of Virginia and College of William and Mary. So what you can do when your student gets close to that time and figures out his final list or her final list, you're going to either go to every college website and figure out if they need this form, or go to CSS Profile and look at the list of colleges and see which ones need it. You may have a list of 8 schools your student is applying to, but only 3 will need the CSS Profile. So that's just homework to do a little bit earlier. You do, even though the FAFSA takes about 20 minutes anymore, this form takes a couple of hours. You only do it once at most colleges, though. You do it freshman year. You don't have to do it anymore. And this is how they decide to give you more scholarship money, because they get an idea of what your household income and outgo really is, which the FAFSA doesn't do. The last thing, and it will apply to quite a few people, I think, more and more now, is special circumstances. You're going to, for example, for those who have seniors, you're going to be submitting 2015 information to a student who will be in college in 2017 and 2018. So your financial situation may have changed in the last couple of years. So how do you let the college know that? They don't know unless you tell them. So let's say someone, your family goes through a divorce, the death of a breadwinner, or somebody retires. Right? A lot of us will go through that retirement. I hear that a lot as people retire from the military especially. So your income changes drastically downward. Then you have to let the college know before you go through the final phases of enrolling. Let the college know that this big change has happened, and let them take you through the process of what they want to do if they can change the financial aid package to reflect. Right, so that is not a fun process, because you have to talk to every college financial aid office, and the college will review those circumstances either before your student enrolls, or some of them wait until October of their freshman year. So you still don't even know if they're going to refund any of your money. You have to pay them, and then maybe they'll refund some of it. So again, that might be part of your process of figuring out where the student's going to go, because school A will review it before, and school B won't review it until after. So again, if you know you have a retirement coming especially, then start planning for that and talking to the colleges before even application about what that process is. So that is all I have for you today. I want to give you saw that there were some sign-up sheets in the back to get the newsletter, but this is another way you can get onto the newsletter. You can text Momentum to 24587, and it'll take you to the website, either the old one or the new one. But either way, you'll be able to just put in your email address. You'll see if you scroll, one website is at the top, the other one is at the bottom, but you'll see where you can put in your email address and get the tips and updates that I send every week. Also, that will be updated every week on my website. If I know of college fairs or anything else going on in the area, I put that on the website as well. So we have a few minutes, I think. If you have any questions, this is a good time to throw those out there. Yes. It changes all the time, and the average for the question was, how much does college escalate, the cost of college escalate every year? And for a while it was 10, 11%. Every year the costs would go up that much. But now we've got some colleges that are throwing off those numbers. We got some that go up, 15%. And a few that are saying we're going to stay at the same tuition for the next 3 years. There are some colleges that are really trying hard to do that. So it's hard to tell. What you can do, though, is go look. Depending on what year your student is, you can go to the websites now of some of the schools you think the student might be interested in, see what they are this year. Then they should be publishing next year very soon, and get a sense of what that college is doing. Yeah. Scholly is a scholarship app. So you go to the App Store, and it's a couple of bucks. But everyone saw this guy on Shark Tank. It's a young guy who got his college paid for, and it's really an easy to use app. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If you either text or and let me put up my contact information. Email me or sign up for the email list. I'll be glad to share the slides with you. Yes. The question was, what if you're a sole proprietor? Well, how does that report it? Then if you're a sole proprietor, you don't fill out, you have all your information goes on your 1040. Yes? But your income from that company goes on your 1040. That's what they want. That's not your money. That's the company's money. Yeah, they're only interested in what money your name is on, and you are is your personal money. Yeah. Yes. I'll answer both of those questions. The first one is yes, there's a way to do that. I had the page for the FAFSA up. If you scroll down that page at the bottom, there's something called the FAFSA forecaster. So you can put in some basic information. They'll try to spit back at what you can expect. I don't think it gives you an EFC anymore, but it gives you, okay, your student would be eligible for Pell Grants or not eligible, that kind of thing. But once you fill out the FAFSA, you can make changes to it. So you don't want to fill it out before your student's going to go to college, because right now the only two you can fill out are for this current year and for next year, 17, 18. But if your student's not going until 19, you don't want to fill it out. If you do it early, and something changes, you can always go back and fix it. And so don't worry about that. That's one of the questions I get. Well, I don't know everything. What if I, make a mistake, or we didn't put all the schools down? It's okay. You can go back and add it later. Yes. The question was about the rate of return on scholarships. So does that mean, what I tell students, if you fill out 10, expect 1, right? And that's, some students do better, some don't. But that just means you spend, and they take about an hour once you get good at it. So you spend 10 hours, you get 1 back, maybe you get a small one, it's $500. That's still $50 an hour. That's how I tell them. How much do you make at Burger King? So do this and you're going to make a lot more. But it takes weeks to find out whether or not you don't want to wait and see if you got this one. You just do it like looking for a job. You just keep doing. Yeah. Well, it looks like we have to move on to the next thing. Thank you so much. And again, this is how to contact me. Feel free to sign up for the list or to text Momentum to 24587.